Today for reading class, we're going to learn about asking and answering questions. But what is a question? Well, a question is just a sentence that asks for more information. So you usually ask a question when you want to know more about something. So questions end in a question mark. So I'm going to show you how to make a question mark. So this is how you make a question mark, and questions end with a question mark. They do not end with a period. Now, what are some of the words that we use to ask a question? Well, we use the word who, we use the word what, we use the word when, we use the word where, we use the word why, and we use the word how. So most of the questions that we ask begin with some of these words. They begin with the word who, they begin with the word what, they begin with the word when, they begin with the word where, they begin with the word why, and they begin with the word how. So now we're going to look at some sentences and you're going to help me determine if they are questions or not. Okay, remember that questions, they usually start with the word who, what, when, where, why, and how, and that they end with a question mark. Okay, so let's look at our first example. So my first example says, where did you get that toy? Is that a question? Does it begin with one of the words that we just talked about? Does it end with a question mark? Yes, it starts with the word where and it ends with a question mark. So yes, it is a question. So I'm going to put a big check mark. Where did you get that toy? That is a question. Now let's look at our next example. Our next example says, I have a toy just like that at home. Is that a question? Does it have a question mark? No. So it's not a question. So I'm going to put a big X. It's not asking me anything. It's just telling me something. Now let's look at our next example. Who is your best friend? Is that a question? Is it asking me something? Yes. It starts with the word who and it ends with a question mark. So it is a question. So I'm going to put a big check mark. Let's look at the next example. And the next example says, my best friend is Mia. Is that a question? Is it asking me something? Does it end with a question mark? No. So it's not a question. So I'm going to put a big X. Now let's look at our next example. Who is your teacher? Does it end with a question mark? Yes. Is it asking you something? Yes. So it is a question. So I'm going to put a big check mark. And it even starts with the word who. Who is your teacher? That is a question. Now let's look at the next one. My teacher is Miss Colazzo. Is it asking me something? No. It's just telling me something. It does not end with a question mark, so it's not a question. So I'm going to put a big X. Now our next example says, what is your name? Is that a question? What is your name? Yes, it is a question. It has the word what and it ends with a question mark. So it is a question. So I'm going to put a big check mark. And our last example, it says, my name is Amy. Is it asking a question? Does it end with a question mark? No. So I'm going to put a big X. It's not asking me a question. It's just telling me something, okay? So remember, the questions are sentences that you ask to learn more about something. And they usually start with the word who, what, where, when, why, and how, and they end with a question mark, okay?